So,
Let's dive in with.
what do you want to talk about?
So we had a wonderful interview in the Hollywood Reporter. Let's talk about first when you got the call for Todd. You're doing True Detective. This call comes in. You're not quite sure. Did you know it was for Joker, or you weren't sure of the film yet?
No, I actually, because I was in Arkansas doing True Detective, I self-taped for it. You know, where you sort of audition on tape. And then I went back to LA. I had, I don't know, like 5 days off, and they sent me home. And my agent called and said, Todd wants to meet you. And said, you should be prepared to read the scene you self-taped. And I went, okay. And he said 11 o'clock on Monday. And I said, I can't do 11 o'clock. My flight's at 1. Can he do 10? And they went, yeah, he'll see you at 10. So I went to his office. I read for him. We had a great conversation. He knew Nick, who I was doing True Detective for, HBO. He created the show and told me to tell him hi. I left. And then the interesting kind of hook about this was Alec Baldwin then called him and said, I want to be in the movie. He's friends with De Niro and said, I want to do this. And he said, well, there's only one role available. And he sent him the script and he read it. He said, yeah, I'll do that. And then Deadline posted a thing saying he was going to play it like Trump. And Alec didn't like that at all. Got really upset and said, I'm not doing your movie. And so Todd said, call Brett. And they made me the offer, and that's how I kind of did it. And he explained this whole story to me when I got to New York. He said, come here, sit down, I want to tell you this. So that's how that process went.
When you got to set, you said the first thing you saw was a scene of Joaquin. Was it in the bathroom?
Yeah. Well, I actually was there to do photos because I did wardrobe and hair and makeup and all that. And then they wanted these photos for when I'm running for mayor. And Todd said, come here, I want to show you something. And he showed me the playback, and they were shooting this repeatedly, but he wanted to show me one particular. And it's after he runs into that bathroom, and then he slowly starts sliding his foot, and that scene, and it was mesmerizing. I mean, and that's kind of when I went, oh, wow, this is going to be really an intense film. Just by that, and there was no dialogue, there was no one else in the scene, just him. So that's kind of when I realized I was in for a really great ride.
And what did you know about Todd's working environment going into this?
Well, I had friends that worked with him. I think one thing I do, because I had questions, is, Thomas Wayne is a pretty prolific figure in the Batman or the DC comic world. And there were some things in the script that I went, are we really gonna do this? Are we really gonna go there? And he goes, yes. So he was very adamant about a direction he wanted to take this film, and it was very clear about what he wanted to do with this film. And there was never any kind of doubt in my mind that he had complete control of what was going on. And what was really cool about it, though, also was he's a huge fan of Martin Scorsese's. And Martin Scorsese actually was an executive producer for a period of time on the film and eventually took his name off because of the controversy. His wife said, yeah, you're at the end of your career, you should take your name off of this. But it was his entire crew. The Irishman crew, they had just wrapped, walked right into Joker. And it was his producers, it was everyone, I think, except Todd used his DP, Lawrence. But that was kind of, I mean, he's very specific about what he wants, and he's very good with actors. He's not, not a tough guy at all in that regard.
He also had the foresight to play scenes differently and to build in sort of options so he's not handcuffed in the edit.
Yeah, I mean, the bathroom scene where I punched Arthur in the nose, we shot a second scene in the theater where he comes to see me, and where I'm seated and he comes up. I think actually if you watch the film again, you'll see when he walks in, there's a guy standing at the door of the theater, and that's my bodyguard. And I'm sitting at the end of the mezzanine on the right-hand side. And I believe that's me sitting down there, and then we had done the scene, and I said, well, why are we was the bathroom scene not any good? And he went, no, it's great. He said, but this is a lighter version of that, because I don't know when I get in the editing room if we may need to lighten some of this up. And fortunately, I think he made the right choice by using the original scene. But yeah, we shot, and Joaquin said that to me at the premiere. He said, you know, I said, man, this is incredible. And he goes, well, we shot like 2 movies. You know, we didn't know what it was really going to be until Todd got in the editing room and put it together. So, yeah.
There's a great shot. It's actually, I think, one of your favorite shots from the film that we've had people blow up to bring in. But that when Thomas is washing his hands and you get a shot of him and Joaquin in the mirror. But it's the imagery and, you know, the metaphor of you've got your back turned to him, which is just sort of the whole story of his life.
Yeah, it is. It's a good metaphor for their relationship, which I can talk about, I guess, because the movie's out, right? Because you have to sign NDAs and all that stuff when you do films like this. But he, you know, we played that he was my illegitimate son, and I asked why, and he said, "Why does the Joker hate Batman so much?" And I said, well, why? He goes, because he didn't get anything. He's your son. And imagine that, you know. So that was what we went with. I think the way he edited it and put it all together, it's a little bit more ambiguous than that. So it was pretty interesting.
Also, that morning that you were shooting that, you kept getting new email the night before, email 4 a.m.
No, not the bathroom scene. When we did the scene in the theater, because I went to the theater that, you know, I was going to go shoot, and I actually had no dialogue that day, and it was all these shots of him following me to the bathroom and pretend how he got by my bodyguard to get in the bathroom, acting like he was cleaning. And at 4 in the morning, I get an email saying, this is the scene for today. And it woke me up, the ding, you know, on my computer. It was next to the bed. And I went, what? And then I started reading, going, what? And then you know, I like time with the script. And then I get to the set, they hand me new sides, and then I'm go to makeup and hair, and I'm desperately looking at this going, I don't know this. And then they hand me another, you know, they keep revising it. And then they said they're ready for rehearsal. And I went, are you kidding? I don't even know this. I just got this in my hand. And they took me to set, and I said, Todd, and Joaquin goes, Brett, I don't know it either. They just handed it to me too. So let's just work it and see what happens. I'm going to turn my phone off. It just dinged. Because the next thing that will happen is my wife will call going, what are you doing? But that was that day. And it was a really funny scene because he comes up and he basically starts saying the same stuff he kind of does. And I'm like, hey, man, what? And I finally turn around, you know, to my bodyguard, like, get this guy out of here. Because my wife is sitting right there. And he takes off running, like, it was packed full of people, and he's jumping from armrest to armrest and calling me names. And, you great, you know, and it's like, it was really funny. But I don't think it was as effective as the other scene, and I think Todd saw that.
When you got to see the film for the first time, start to finish, what were some of the feelings that you were having?
Well, I was astounded by this movie, you know, and even though I was in it and I read the script and I knew what was going to happen, his performance, Joaquin's performance, is so intense and so real. And it was an interesting process working with him because in the morning we'd be in makeup or hair, and I'd say good morning, and we kind of chat a little bit. But he was pretty, you know, he'd lost 50 pounds. So, I mean, he probably couldn't have been real happy with being that hungry all the time. But he would talk to me in the morning, and then once he went to his trailer and got in to his wardrobe and what I would say put Arthur Fleck's skin on, he was Arthur all day. I mean, we never talked while we worked other than to do dialogue together. And at the end of the day, he'd walk up and go, Brett, thanks so much, you know, shake my hand, and then he could go be Joaquin again. So it was an interesting process to work with him, and he's so phenomenal. But the feeling I got, and this is, people laugh when I tell them this because they go, that's wrong. And I go, at the end of the movie, after I'm shot and like chaos reigns, I almost stood up and going, yeah, anarchy, it's great. You know, it's like I bought it. And that's how effective I think the movie is. So that was my feeling. My wife at the premiere said, I almost got up. I said, what? She goes, I almost left. It was so intense. I just needed a break. I needed a 1-minute break just to breathe. She goes, but I didn't want to miss anything of yours, so I stayed. And she goes, I'm so glad I did.
It's true love.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, you also had some tenure with Chris Nolan on Dark Knight Rises.
Yes, I did. I was the senator.
Talk about working with Chris and then sort of this new life you have with Jonah Nolan and that whole.
Well, I did Dark Knight Rises, and Chris Nolan and his brother Jonathan, or Jonah, co-wrote it. And so I think it was the first day of shooting that we did the bar scene where, I'm all drunk or drugged up, and, Anna's there, and Anne Hathaway, and I had just flown in, and I was so jet lagged, I didn't have to play anything but just like be the way I felt. And anyway, I shot that, and I shot the movie, and then I got a call from my manager saying there's this pilot they just did in New York, and it got picked up, and they're really interested in you for a role. I doubt if you'll get it. They'll probably hire a New York actor. And so I finally flew home from London, and he goes, "You just got this offer for this show called Person of Interest. It's a recurring role." And I went, "Oh." He goes, "Who do you know on that?" And I said, "I don't know." And then the supervising producer called me, who I'd worked with years ago. He's a Canadian guy, saying, "Welcome to the show, blah, blah, blah." I was like, good. And I said, "Well, maybe it was Lewis, this guy." And then they said, "We have to be at wardrobe tomorrow morning." We're down at Union Square. I go there. There's a big truck. I walk in, and they're fitting someone. And there's like 4 guys standing there. And they went, "Oh, can you just step out for a minute? We're almost done." I stepped out, and this guy steps out with an Illinois accent. He goes, "How you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm a little jet lagged. I'm a little tired." And he goes, "Yeah, I know." I go, "You do?" He goes, "Yeah, you're working with my brother Chris in London." And I went, "Chris?" And he went, "Yeah, Chris Nolan, my brother." And I'm like, "Oh, you're Jonah." And he goes, "Yeah." And I went, "Why do you have an American accent?" And he speaks with an English accent. And he goes, "Well, he just puts that on. It gets him more work." And so that's how I started working with Jonah. I actually got real close to doing something in Westworld. But that didn't happen. There's a guy named Ed Harris who they hired instead, which is really good because I love Ed. And Ed's an old friend. We did Apollo 13 together. So, and then I just got an offer to do a movie I'm going to do December 1st in New Orleans. A woman named Lisa Joy is directing. And so I looked her up, and it turns out that's Jonathan Nolan's wife. And I was like, wow. And my agent said, "What do you want to do? It's not that big of a role, but it's, And I said, "No, I want to do it because I like being in that circle of the Nolans and Lisa, and hope that they keep calling me. We all want to work."
Well, speaking of Apollo 13, talk about that entire process. When training, people you interviewed.
Well, when we did that, is this being filmed? Can I say something? I'm going to get in trouble.
You can be fresh.
The film itself it's probably one of my most favorite films because my wife's Michelle Little, who I was married to, and we both were cast in the movie. She played one of the astronauts. She's the woman that's with Kathleen Quinlan all the time in her house, a little blonde. And so we were both doing the movie, and my wife got pregnant on that film. And we had been trying to have a baby for years, so that was sort of a miracle for us. But the process was they had astronaut training school, which that was separate from the mission control school. And Rita Ryak, who did the wardrobe, had put me in a tie and the short sleeve shirt like all the guys. And all of a sudden she runs in, she goes, "Brad, you gotta come with me." And I'm like, "What happened?" And she's like, "No, you gotta come, you're in the wrong wardrobe." And I went, "Why?" And she goes, just come. Because they had us, like when we rehearsed and everything, we weren't even shooting yet, but we were all kind of wardrobed up. And she said, "You're an astronaut. Capcom is the backup crew." So I ended up finding out who this guy was and called him, and I interviewed him. He's a farmer in Michigan, and I'm going blank on his name right now. But she said, "And you have to now go train with the astronauts." So I go to the astronaut training, and Dave Scott is the technical advisor who did Apollo 18, I think, or 17. And I played him in From the Earth to the Moon, because I played his character. I did about 4 episodes of that. But I sit down, Bill Paxton, who was an old friend of mine, God bless his soul, because he's no longer with us, but I sit next to him. Or no, I think Tom was here, and Bill was there. Bill shoves me in the shoulder, and I go, "What?" And he goes, that guy, man, he took a crap on the moon." And I was like, "Oh, yeah." And Tom's like, and then Dave's like, "Please be quiet." He's like, but that was the experience on that. I mean, it was a wonderful, wonderful ensemble. And we won the Screen Actors Guild Award that year for Best Ensemble of a Film. That was just, it's people ask me all the time what your favorite movie or what your favorite project you ever worked on is, and it's hard to really decipher what's between, because there's things you love about everything you do. I mean, being a part of Joker is iconic and something that for the rest of my career I'll always remember and relish. But also because my wife and I got to do a movie together, and she got pregnant on that movie, and I got to work with a lot of friends. My best friend was the unit publicist on the movie, Andy Lipschultz. My wife was there, Bill was there. I got to know Tom, and then Tom later, called up and offered me the role of Dave Scott in From the Earth to the Moon. So there was a lot of wonderful things about that made me very happy.
When you're working with in Mission Control, are you hearing the other actors feeding you the lines? What is that process like when?
Well, we were all on a loop, and the great thing is Tom, Kevin, and Bill weren't shooting yet, but they came in every day and sat in another room and did all the dialogue with us. And we're all on a loop, and it was fun between takes. The guys, everyone starts talking about cars, like, what do you drive? What do you drive? What do you drive? And, and finally someone got the nerve up and said, hey, Tom, what do you drive? And he goes, what do I drive? He goes, yeah, what do you drive? He goes, I drive a minivan. I got kids. What do you think I drive? So it was fun, and, it really was like a big, just ton of fun, and it was very emotional for all of us because you know what happens, and I had friends that said they didn't want to see the movie. I said, why? He goes, well, I know the ending. And I said, just go see it. And then my buddy, he's a photographer, calls me up and goes, man, I was crying. It was so great, but it's just perception of that. But it was a wonderful experience, and another one of those films like Joker where you sit back and go, I'm so happy I was a part of that. I'm so happy that I was allowed, given access to that group of people, and to work with Ron Howard, who I think is a wonderful man, and it really is nice. I mean, whenever we're in the same city shooting, I'll try and go to see him, and we don't talk about business. We talk about golf or his children, So it was a wonderful, wonderful project to be associated with.
I know you grew up as a Gulf surfer, and
Yep.
You couldn't ask for a better role than on Lost in Hawaii. Talk about sort of the personal life that you got to enjoy outside of working, and also with Matthew Fox and Damon Lindelof and all those guys.
Well, I always say Hollywood's paid for my surf vacations because I got to surf in Mexico, I got to surf in South Africa, I got to surf in Hawaii, I got to surf in Australia and New Zealand, all on Hollywood's dime because they flew me there, and I went, well, I'm not coming home, I'm going to go have some waves. So, but Hawaii was great. One of my favorite moments is we were at Policeman's Beach, it's called. I think that's where they shot the pilot where the plane crashed. And I'm standing there, and it was lunchtime with this grip, and we're looking at this wave breaking we're on a dry reef, and there's a really nice wave breaking on the reef outside. And we're looking at the wave, and I turned to the guy, and I said, you do realize this is your office? He went, oh, wow, yeah, bro, yeah, it is. So it was a great experience, and obviously I love Hawaii, and so to be able to go there whenever I was needed, I always stayed longer.
Do you like being on location more? Do you find that it helps create a better reality, or are you just as comfortable shooting on stage?
Well, acting, if you're in the environment, it's obviously more realistic. But I also, I love working at home so I can sleep in my own bed. But I do find that, I'm getting old, but I've done this for a long time, 40 years, and I love the experience of traveling and meeting people, even being here, and I've never been to Kentucky. So that's another experience for me. So I've always found travel to be enlightening. And there's a growth to it because you learn about people and you learn about states or other countries. I mean, I lived in Bogota for 2 years on Narcos, and that was an incredible experience. And I'd like to go back. I mean, I love Colombia. So, yeah, there's pros and cons to both. The con is not being with your family and not being in your home. The pros are you gain an enormous amount of experience and knowledge, and you also get to learn about other places in the world. Open your eyes a little bit.
Absolutely. You're also very much an athlete, and when that crosses over with films like 42 or The Replacement, are you kind of judging the other actors and how well they're, do they know their stuff, so to speak?
Well, yeah. I mean, Keanu used to laugh at me when we were doing the replacements because he goes, I look at you and you're like that old salty dog that won't give up, 'cause I was a little old to be playing the role, but Howie cast me. I helped Dennis Quaid learn how to pitch for The Rookie.
It's a great film.
Because Dennis never pitched, and I was a baseball pitcher before I discovered theater in college. So I helped him with that, but I teach as well, and this is a quick story I'll tell you that I tell all my students, I said, always be nice to PAs and production assistants and whoever, craft service. You always be nice to everyone. And they go, well, yeah. When I go, no, you really have to be nice to them. They go, why? And I go, because that guy might be running a studio one day. Or that guy might do this, and be a director. And my wife had done a film in Hollywood years ago in the 80s, and she shot nights. So I went there every night, and I hung out, and there was a PA who stood by her trailer because it was in a bad area before Hollywood got cleaned up. And I talked to this guy. He was a lawyer from Texas. He dropped out of the law and wanted to be a writer. And he was a young guy, and I sat around. We'd sit outside because they were shooting nights. I talked to him. He kept saying, man, just don't give up. Don't give up. Just keep writing. Tenacity, tenacity, tenacity. And we did that for about a month, and then the film wrapped, and never saw the guy again. And then Dennis is doing The Rookie. And he goes to have dinner with the director and the producer, and he calls me, and no one calls my phone after 10 o'clock at night. If it does, it's always Dennis, because Dennis and I went to college together and grew up together. And the phone rings, and my wife goes, oh, that's Dennis. And I go, hey. And he's like, oh, Brad, look, I went to dinner with the producer and director tonight. And I went, yeah. And he goes, I was going to bring you up because you should be in this film. And I went, oh, Dennis, that's nice. He goes, well, we sat down. Before I could open my mouth, the director goes, you know who should be in this movie? Brett Cullen. And Dennis laughed, and he goes, why are you laughing? Isn't he like your best friend? He goes, yeah, but how do you know him? And he goes, do you know how you know this guy? And I went, no. And he goes, he was the PA on Michelle's movie. And that was John Lee Hancock, who's pretty prolific, right? But he was just a young kid and we're still friends. He tried to put me in a couple of movies. I actually was cast in The Rookie and had to drop out because I was doing a play for CBS live with Julie Andrews and Chris Plummer, and their schedule got messed up because of rain. So I was committed already to the play. One-night performance on Golden Pond.
That's a beautiful thing, though.
Yeah. No, but John Lee, that's the thing. You never know in this business. I see actors sometimes who get full of themselves or think that they're more important than the actual crew or some young PA, and I'm like, don't do that, because it could come back to bite you in the butt.
So circling back to Joker, I have one more question, then we'll open it up to the audience. When you're doing the scene with the young actor playing Bruce and the wife, what sort of work do you do, if any, to sort of create that chemistry or sort of get that familiarity that will come across on the screen?
Well, I have a wife, and I have a daughter, and, we've been in some pretty crazy situations. So, really with her and I and our son, Bruce, it was really not a situation where we had to work real hard to try and create that. It's like I'm very protective. I'm very protective of my daughter and my wife. Someone messes with them, they're messing with the wrong person because they're going to see me coming. And it's the same thing with that. It's any father would be that way about, or any husband, I would imagine. So there wasn't a lot of talk about it. It was just you're with me, you're my wife, you're my kid, and we had to leave the theater, or we had to do this, So that was a pretty simple process. That wasn't difficult to do at all. But it was, she was lovely, and he was lovely. I think he'd actually worked with Keanu before, too. No, he had worked with Joaquin before.
And what did you take from the set? I think you told there was...
One day we were shooting, and they put us on the De Niro set, the talk show, and I was in this little room, and I'm sitting there just waiting, going over my lines, and I'm looking, and I see this magazine, and there's a magazine cover of me holding a goose with a golden egg. That was Thomas Wayne. So I'm sitting there, and I keep looking at it, and I got my backpack with me, and I finally just pick it up and shove it in my backpack, and I took it home to the hotel, and my wife saw it, and unbeknownst to me, she took it and had it framed, and it was my Christmas present last year. So that's really cool. It hangs in our dining room.
That's fantastic.
And I say, I hope no one from Warner Brothers comes around, because I'll be in deep doo-doo for stealing that.
Hopefully they can run another one off.
Yeah, I'm sure they could.
All right, Patty, let's do a couple questions.
All right, we'll just take hands, and I'll just sort of come to you. All right, young man, then we'll go to you, Cape Crusader. Okay. Hey, what's your name?
Hi, I'm Patrick.
What do you have for us?
I've seen you in many different roles. Sam Kane as a gunslinger in The Young Riders, The Replacements, and By the Sword with F. Murray Abraham.
Yeah.
What kind of training did you have to go through, and do you still enjoy doing some of those things?
Well, by the sword, for instance, I was a competitive fencer in the NCAAs. I mean, I actually did fence. And what was difficult with that was I was having to do Saber. And I was a foil guy, and Saber's an entirely different weapon. So I had to be taught that by the guys. And foil and epee are very similar. So, you know, it was something that I could slip into. Plus, I spent a lot of time in the saw, you know, fencing. Gunfighting. Every kid's been doing that since they were 2, you know. I mean, like, hey, bang, you know. So that was fun. But actually learning the weight of the gun and learning how to do that stuff, learning how to ride, you know. When I first did my first series in 1979, it was called The Chisholms with Robert Preston and Rosemary Harris. Delta Burke was my younger sister. And I had ridden when I was a kid, when I was like 7, 8, 9 years old. And I come out to Hollywood, and the guy, can you ride? And I said, well, I used to ride. And they took me out there and put me on a horse, and like I really didn't know how to ride that well. And I was going around this arena, you know, like boom, bouncing around. And then they sent this guy, they called him, and this was his name, Old Deaf Gene, because he couldn't hear very well. And he was this old cowboy, old wrangler, and he said, hey, kid, just take your feet out of the stirrups. And I said, well, he goes, take your feet out of the stirrups, so, you know. And he goes, now just sit the horse. And he started talking to me, we're walking, and then he gets trotting, my horse starts trotting, and I'm just sitting there like, and he goes, now you're riding a horse, son, you know? And that's how I did that. And then I went to the Young Riders. I was quite proficient at riding at that point because you know, I rode for years. And those guys got me into roping, so I used to be a team roper. So when anyone talks about, you know, actors and writing and trying to do that, I'm always going to look, make sure you know what you're going to be asked to do, or unless they're going to train you. And so The Replacements was a 3-week training program. And the stunt coordinator kept trying to like intimidate all the, you know, because there was a lot of football players who weren't making the cut because they were trying to find the guys they wanted. And I'm going blank on his name. But he's, you know, he played for USC, won the national championship. And, hey, you guys, I'm telling you right now, and he's screaming and everything. And every one of you guys can get cut. And I walked up and I said, you can't cut me. I have a contract. He went, shut up. It's like, but yeah, I think every actor should, you know, I was really well trained, voice. I mean, I'm classically trained as an actor. I did tons of Shakespeare. I was a fencer. I was going to get my master's actually in stage combat and dialects because I love doing dialects. I love playing different characters. But then I got taken to Hollywood by John Travolta's manager, and that's how I got the Chisholms. So, but thank you for your interest. Did that answer your question? Okay.
And he got his candy. Yes, Cape Crusader, what's your name?
My name's David.
What do you have for us?
And part of what makes Joker so great is that it's ambiguous and the viewer can interpret it in different ways.
Right.
But now it's a $1 billion film, and there's talks about should it be a sequel. And Todd has been kind of coy, saying, yeah, maybe. A sequel would kind of have to explain like what was real from the first film. Do you think there's more to do with the character, and do you think a sequel would be a good idea?
Well, I think anytime a movie makes $1 billion, the studio is going to start sniffing around thinking, well, let's do that again. Even if we just make $500 million, we'll be happy, right? So I'm pretty certain that there's probably been discussions. I don't know whether, I know that, I'm pretty sure that in order for Joaquin to do this, he had to sign a multi-film contract, meaning that if there are sequels, he has to do it. I've heard rumors that they're talking about a possible sequel. And if there was to be one, I would trust Todd to do it in a way that it's not going to be one of those films that sort of, you know, it's sort of like Godfather and Godfather 2. There's going to be some power to it, and there's going to be some intelligence to it. And he's going to have a take on it that's going to not just be like, oh, okay, so now he meets Batman, or, you know, now he's grown up, or, you know, whatever. I think it's going to be to do with following up on what happens, you know, when he's now in an asylum, right, when the movie ends. So where do you go from there? Or does he go backwards a little bit, you know, and maybe show some of the stuff that you think is real that he read about Arkham State Hospital, but maybe wasn't, You know, I mean, I'm hoping they go backwards because then I could be there.
Who's got another one? Do-do-do-do-do-do. Going once.
Ah, there's someone.
Ah. Hey, what's your name?
My name's Andy. I'm not sure I really have a question as much as I'm just curious about the Blacklist and what your experience has been like on that show as far as playing Frank. And I know there's this whole thing now, is Frank really Ilya or is he not? And is there anything you can share as far as the season or the mid-season finale and spoilers for the future?
I'm not Frank. That's just a name, Frank Bloom. I can't tell you who I am, but I can tell you that it'll be a. And here's the honest truth. I can't tell you who I am, but what I can tell you is I'm not even sure I am who they say I am now. Right? And working on that show is amazing. I mean, James is one of the most prolific actors in television. Everything he touches, he's sort of like the Bill Bixby of our generation, right? You know, the guy who's in everything and it's always a hit. He reminds me a lot, because I did Person of Interest. He reminds me a lot, in not necessarily personality, but in work ethic, as Michael Emerson, because they're the two guys that I walk in and I'm like, holy, that's a lot. That's a lot of lines these guys have in this scene. And it's like talking about this or countries or the language, and they will not know it in the blocking rehearsal. Like they're still like trying to read it, and that's not my MO. I'm so paranoid. I want to know it the day before, so by the time I walk in there, I'm like, let's shoot. I want to be that guy. Well, they sit there and do that, and then we walk away for 10, 15, 20 minutes while they light after they've blocked the scene and set up their angles and what they want to shoot. And then they walk in and boom, they own it. They have it. It's phenomenal, both of them. And I told James that. I said, you remind me of Michael Emerson. He goes, in what way? And I said, you guys can memorize anything. I mean, and do it like that. It's like they have a photographic memory. And Michael, some of the stuff he had to do with me, I literally, and I'd screw my lines up because I was so amazed. I was like listening to him going, wow. And it's my line. No, sorry, But no, it's been a wonderful experience. I will tell you that I did 5 episodes. I just finished. I was just in New York. I flew home last Friday. I don't know. I think they're waiting to find out if there's going to be an 8th season, which I think they're going to be told by the network soon. It's not going to be the normal, when they do the pickups later in the year, so that they can plan, because it will be the last season if that's it. If they don't, then they're going to try and sort of wrap up things. It's not going to be just like when I did Lost. I never even watched the finale because I don't want to know. I really don't want to know, because there's no way you can explain everything that happened on that island in a show, right? And with this, I think it's the same thing. This Person of Interest and The Blacklist are 2 of the smartest shows, that I think network television has. There's a few. The Good Doctor's another one. So when you see good product, I'll be a patron. And also being able to work on those shows is quite an honor, as an actor. So it's like working on West Wing. West Wing was the same thing, where I got to, be Alan Alda's running mate. Governor Sutherland. I think that was my name. I was, conservative Southern gentleman. So, but yeah, to answer your question, I can't tell you.
There you go, boss. Yeah, thank you. All right, any more? Yeah, all the way to the back. No worries. Yes, the young guy wearing the seatbelt in the non-moving attraction.
Yeah, I don't know. I came in late, so I don't know if True Detective's been mentioned.
Not yet.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
name?
Sorry, I'm Curry. From here in Louisville. But anyway, True Detective, that I think is another show that's just knocking it out of the park season after season. So I just wanted to get your impressions from working on that show. And you were great in it.
Thank you.
And Mahershala Ali, what's it like working with him particularly as well?
Well, one, it was a real, thank you for bringing it up. Curry is your name? Curry?
Yeah, I like spice.
Like spice.
Wow, that's a great name.
That's a great line.
Yeah. I knew a guy named Clay Houston. He says, Clay is in mud, Houston is in Texas. Yeah, every time. But, so Curry, True Detective was, and it was a really long shoot, and it was arduous at times because, I was booked for 2 months and I was there for 4. So that's normally not how it works. But HBO allowed Nick and the producers to explore this and to make sure that like the third season was as good as the first. Mahershala is such a consummate professional, so Steven. But Mahershala is one of those guys that's really rare in this business where he's there for 18 hours. He comes in, he says good morning to everybody, asks how the wife is or is your son still sick? You know, he's one of those guys. And then after 18 hours, he turns around and says goodbye to everyone. I don't care how tired he is. And one night you have a turnaround issue when you're shooting. Like if I wrapped at 10 o'clock at night, I can't come back to work until 10 the next morning because I have to have 12 hours. As well as if they want to push my call, they have to pay you like $1,000 or something. And they needed Mahershala because he was first scene up, and it was this big scene we had in the detective den, that area where we had all the pictures and everything. And they said, we're going to cut Mahershala loose. And Steven went, well, but I have that look with him before I get really angry because I tell him, you know, we're not doing this right now. and he said, but I have that look, and he said, well, you can do it. And he goes, no, I'm staying. I forgot about that. You can't cut me loose yet. So he was really about performance, about being there for the other cast members. Just a wonderful man. And Nick is an intense guy who has a real vision. And the director, Daniel, who came in for the last 2 blocks, I think, I think he definitely did the last block. He said no one had seen episode 10. And most people weren't allowed to read the script because I guess HBO had been hacked, and they found it at season 2. So the director came in and he goes, you know, they told me that the last episode is like beautiful, sad, and just rejoicefully, it's just everything, you know. And he said, it's impossible to be all those things. I can't believe it. And we said, well, and he went, it's all those things. And then if you saw the show, that last episode is magical. It's beautiful, and it's also heartbreaking. But thank you for I loved working on it. I mean, obviously, it's a real honor to be a part of something like that. Enjoy the candy.
Yes. Yeah, anybody who asks a question gets a piece of candy. Those are my rules. Got any more?
Anyone else have a
Going
question?
once? Going twice? Okay. I am a huge fan of By the Sword. I call it one of my list of curious movies that I will throw at people and say, like, watch this, trust me. And they always turn back and say, like, this is great. Why have I never heard about it? Because it's hard to classify. It starts off as it becomes a sports movie, it becomes a mystery, it goes back into a sports movie, and it waffles its internal genre, but it's a delight. And absolutely, and yeah, as a foilist, you sold Saber really well.
Thank you very much. And what's interesting is Jeremy Kagan, who directed that, lives behind me, or like catty-cornered me behind on the next street over, and we're pretty good friends. He teaches at USC a lot. But most of the movies he does are those films where he takes you to some place that, like, I think he directed the movie about the Hasidic Jews who played baseball. I forget the name of that, with Robbie Benson. You know, he always takes you into a place that you think, oh, this can't be interesting. And he actually creates a scenario that is just beautiful. Same thing with like going into a fencing saw. I mean, to understand the competition and the hard work it takes to do that, and also, you know, F. Murray Abraham is such a great guy, and we're still friendly. But I remember the first day on that set, and I was standing there in the fencing saw in my office and Eric's office, and he's sitting there with his arms crossed at a chair up against this wall, and he finally says something. He goes, "Where are you from?" And I went, "Well, originally I'm from Houston, Texas." And he went, "We'll get along." And I said, "Why's that?" And he goes, and he looks around like he goes, "Don't tell anyone, but I'm from El Paso." Because, yeah, his father owned a grocery store in El Paso, Texas, and that's where he grew up. And then he went to New York and became, you know,
one of the New York stage actors.
Yeah, and also Salieri, you know, and I think, didn't he win the Oscar for that?
Yes, he did.
Great guy, wonderful actor. Eric as well. I've worked with Eric and Julia, so I've worked I haven't worked with the niece. Isn't there a niece who's an actress? Jenna?
Emma.
Yeah. I haven't worked with her. But yeah, no, thank you. I love that movie. And it was so much fun to do because, one, it shot in L.A., and basically we shot in one location. You know, we drive on the other side of downtown. There was this huge warehouse that they built. And the fun thing is we had some of the best fencers in the country come out because they were so excited. And my master, my fencing master, who is no longer with us, but he was really thrilled. He's a French master. He was Marcel Marceau's best friend. He taught Marcel Marceau how to fence. So I'm there, and they had a holding warehouse for all the extras, and you know, when you weren't shooting. And what those guys did is they actually created strips, and we used to play King of the Mountain. And to I cheated though, but I beat one of the guys top 10 in the country in épée. And I didn't cheat, but I stood there until he'd done like 3 or 4 bouts, and then I got on. And I got him. I was like, I won! And then, of course, got creamed by the next guy.
You probably had a size advantage.
Yeah.
I was a saberist, so yeah, just foil. But yeah, the minute the old adage, foils for lads, épées for men. Saber was for maniacs. I was one of the maniacs.
And with foil, one of the things that made me good, even though I wasn't as proficient with all the moves that a lot of these guys had, and there's because I was trained classically. Those guys modern day all jump around, right? I was down.
The foot and the flips. And
Yeah.
They've altered it for the electronics.
But what I do is I watch a guy fence, and I watch for his traits. And this guy, he'd do this thing. He'd go 1, 2, 3, and then he'd attack. So I waited. He'd go 1, 2, and I'd hit on 2, and I'd hit him in the arm, which is an épée is a score. And I did that to him 3 times in a row, and he was furious. He was like, God, what are you? And then he's like, switched it up a little bit, but I caught another trait, and I caught him on the leg.
On his tells.
Yeah. So that's how I beat him, but he was also tired.
That would do that too. That would do that too. I had a chance to talk to Eric Roberts about it. He was at one of the other shows, and I pulled him aside. It's like, so I love Bioshock. Oh yeah, me too, man. That was just a real trip. That movie, man. I got to play that total cool dude.
Yeah.
And he sung your praises too.
He what?
He sung your praises too. He's like, I got to work at Murray. I got to work at Cullen. That was a good time.
Yeah. No, he's. He's a good old Georgia boy. Just like Julia, she's a good old Georgia girl, I mean, we went dancing one night on something to talk about. It's Marine Bar, because we're right across from Paris Island in Beaufort. And, people said, what's she like? And I went, she's so much fun. I mean, you get a couple of 7 and 7s in her, and that girl the Georgia comes out. And she's like, can you teach me how to two-step? I was out there dancing with her.
Very nice, very nice. Okay, we got time for one more? Going once, going twice. It's okay to ask another one if you ask one again. Going once, going twice. All right, I'll tell you.
There we go.
You started.
Bit more.
Okay. What is the hardest accent that you have to do or ever done?
The hardest accent, well, one that I got really good at was Australian, because I used to play Australians all the time before they hired all those guys, right? So, and my friend, I did the Thornbirds, and we were all faking this accent because, we didn't really get it. And I became really close friends with Brian Brown. Do you know who that is? He's married to Rachel Ward, but he was in the Thornbirds, and he finally says, listen, mate, I'm going to fucking teach you to speak Australian, because every other word's F out of their mouth. And so he did, and he said, well, like in Texas, you don't open your mouth much. There's too many flies, so he just started teaching, because everyone's always opening their mouth, doing this thing. So Australian, and I've become really good at it. I haven't done it in a while, but when I go to Australia, I walk around and they go, that guy's Australian. And he's like, no, he's from Texas. It's like,
There you go, thank you. All right, Curry, bring us home.
All right, cool.
What do you have?
Like I said, I don't know if this was asked, but like the scene where you punch Joaquin and Joker, Joaquin seems to be like a method actor. How close did you get to nailing him, or how'd that go, shooting that?
well, the interesting thing is you don't get close to an actor when you're punching. I mean, it's how the great thing that he makes me look like I punched what out of him is because of how when you get hit, you have to sell the punch. All I have to do is this. And you can even do it that slow, because they can speed it up. They can do whatever they want with film and digital. So, but I was probably this far away from his face, because it's like you do that, and he goes, whoa, and you go, whoa, man, Brett creamed him, but that's him, and that's how good of an actor he is. And it wasn't like he said, hit me. I tower over him. He certainly would not want to be hit by me. And, he made sure when we were doing it, he's like, okay, he'd step back, and he goes, is that good for camera? Yeah, okay, and then we did it. We did it probably about 8 times. Wow. different angles and stuff.
It's one of the best on-screen punches I've seen. It looked real. I knew it wasn't.
Oh, thank you.
Cool. Brian, before we go, I'd like to ask one final question. Do you have any upcoming projects that you're allowed to share with us?
Well, I did a film in Madrid called, it's a little indie film called American Carnage that is, I did because it's so twisted that I thought it's about immigration and this governor who rounds up all the immigrants in his state and sends all the parents home and keeps the kids and makes them work in an old folks home. And what he's doing there is was it Chris Dane? Is it? Hold on, I'll tell you his name. The guy who plays the partner. I can't show that. What's his name? Eric Dane. Some of you ladies may know him. He was on, like McHottie or one of those
Grey's
guys.
Anatomy, yeah.
He plays a scientist who ages these kids and fattens them up, and then they become hamburgers for my hamburger chain. And it's so dark and weird that, we did that movie. And so I finished that, and then I'm getting ready to do a movie called Jade's Earrings in New Orleans, December 1st with Hugh Jackman. So that's what I have on the hopper at the moment. And The Blacklist, which is still airing.